Next, on Currents News, a bloody scene inside a Southern California nightclub after an ex-Marine storms inside and opens fire. New rules are now in effect that protect companies and organizations who opt out of offering contraceptives in health insurance benefits. The U.S. Bishops' Fall General Assembly in Baltimore is just days away. Many important topics are on the agenda. We have a preview. Plus, it's a larger-than-life display in Times Square to help one New York man receive the gift of life. All that and more right now.
I am very emotional right now. This is my firstborn son, and it's tough.
A father's pain after yet another mass shooting, this time at a nightclub in Southern California. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. A 28-year-old ex-Marine opening fire during student night at a country bar in Thousand Oaks. When it was all over, 12 people were dead, including the gunman. Tonight, authorities are facing the grim task of notifying the families of the dead. Mary Maloney has the latest.
If you're hearing gunshots fired, one person advising there's a subject inside shooting.
An all too familiar dispatch as police get word of another mass shooting, this time in Thousand Oaks, California.
Push down through. We got multiple people down. We need a lot of ambulances.
Sheriff's investigators have identified the gunman. They say he was a former Marine and known to law enforcement.
In April of this year, deputies were called to his house for a subject disturbing. They called out our crisis intervention team, our mental health specialist, who met with him, talked to him, and cleared him.
The horror began around 11:20 p.m. when the gunman entered the Borderline Bar and Grill. The country bar was hosting a college night, and it was packed with students.
So then our friends got the bar stools and they started slamming it against the window so we could get out.
Hours after the shooting, loved ones were desperate for answers. Some receiving the news no parent wants to hear.
This is going to be an absolute heart-wrenching time for me and my family.
At least a dozen people were killed, including Sheriff's Deputy Ron Hewlett, who was one of the first to respond.
Gave his all. As I told his wife, he died a hero because he went in to save lives, to save other people.
In honor of his sacrifice, a procession traveled with Hewlett's body as he was taken from the hospital to the examiner's office. Mary Maloney, Currents News.
The head of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, Archbishop Jose Gomez, released a statement this morning saying, "Let us pray hard for all the families, for those who were murdered and those who were injured, and in a special way for the heroic officer, Sergeant Ron Hewlett, who lost his life defending people in the attack." This nightclub shooting, another in a growing list of massacres in the U.S. Here are the top 5 in the last 2 years. The deadliest mass shooting took place in October of 2017. 58 people were killed at the Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas. More than 1 month later, 26 people were shot and killed at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. On Valentine's Day of 2018, 17 students were killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. A few weeks ago, we saw the next deadliest shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 11 were killed there. And finally, 10 people were killed when a gunman opened fire at Santa Fe High School in Texas. In other news, Election Day is over, but some races have yet to be decided, from a controversial governor's race in Georgia to the Senate races in Arizona and Florida. Kelly Smoot has that report.
On Tuesday, as you know, we earned a clear and convincing victory at the ballot box.
Republican Brian Kemp announcing Thursday that he is beginning the transition process to become the next governor of Georgia. That's despite the fact that his opponent, Democrat Stacey Abrams, has not yet conceded the race.
Votes are still being counted, ladies and gentlemen, and the votes of all the voters of Georgia deserve to be counted.
Abrams' campaign said both the voting and ballot counting processes have been mired in controversy and is pursuing legal action.
All the votes haven't been counted. How can anybody claim a victory when there are enough votes that have not been counted that could cause a runoff here?
And in the Florida Senate race, Republican Governor Rick Scott has a slight lead over Democrat incumbent Senator Bill Nelson. But the vote is so close that Nelson has already asked for a recount. An automatic recount would be triggered if the final margin is less than 0.5 percentage point. That initial vote count is not expected until Saturday afternoon. And in Arizona, votes are still being counted in the race to replace retiring Senator Jeff Flake. Locked in a tight race, it may be days before officials there can say whether Democrat Kyrsten Sinema or Republican Martha McSally will become the state's first female senator. Kelly Smoot, Currents News.
One day after Attorney General Jeff Sessions stepped down, President Trump already has some people in mind to take over the job. Mr. Trump is said to be considering former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie for the job, as well as Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Trump has selected Matt Whitaker to serve as acting AG, and he has been very critical of the Mueller-Russia probe, which could potentially have some ominous implications for special counsel Robert Mueller. New health care rules that favor the church's position on contraceptives are now official. The regulations allow a number of employers to stop offering contraceptives through their health insurance if they object for religious or moral reasons. The Department of Health and Human Services says about 200 employers will be affected. Government programs that provide free or subsidized contraceptives to low-income women will continue. U.S. bishops are preparing to head to Baltimore this weekend for their biannual meeting. Many topics in the headlines are expected to be on the agenda. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, will be there to cover the meeting, but he joins us now with a preview. Christopher, always good to have you here with me at the desk. Is it safe to say, based on what you've heard, that the sexual abuse crisis will be the priority when the bishops meet on Monday?
Absolutely, Liz. This is a moment that not just the bishops themselves, but the 75 million Catholics around the country are waiting for. They want to know, can the church get this issue right once and for all?
Having said that, how do you think they're planning to broach this discussion? What discussions or decisions will come out of this, if any at all?
Well, on the issue of sex abuse, we're talking about 4 main areas that the U.S. bishops are going to look to address. One, they're going to implement a new strategy for reporting abuse that relies on a third-party system. There'll be new protocols in place for bishops removed for abuse. We'll have a new standard of conduct for bishops on the table. And then finally, a potential investigation into the McCarrick saga, the former Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, who for decades abused seminarians. And now many Catholics want to know how he was able to sort of rise through the ranks of church leadership for so long.
They're going to cover a lot there, Christopher. Obviously, the Vatican wants to be involved, and people believe that they need to be involved. Pope Francis, in response to the crisis, has suggested that the USCCB, they completely scrap a formal agenda and instead hold a week-long spiritual retreat. Has that been discussed by the bishops at all?
Well, Liz, the Pope put this on the table when he met with the USCCB leadership back in September, and the leadership felt that it was too soon to sort of scrap the plans. So what they've decided to do is on Monday to start with the formal sort of address from the head of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, Cardinal DiNardo, and then move on and spend the rest of the day in sort of retreat, reflection, and prayer. And then in January, from January 2nd through January 9th, the bishops are going to gather in Chicago for a full week, led by the preacher of the papal household, who is going to guide them through this retreat together as a body of bishops, in nearly an unprecedented sort of moment.
In the time we have left, Christopher, another part of their formal agenda also includes an update to last month's synod, which you covered. The bishops will be looking at the final document. Can you tell us anything about that at all?
Well, I think the bishops are going to want to hear what was discussed and the major issues, which will include, of course, a greater call for women leadership in the church, an embrace of digital technology, and of course the sex abuse issue, which kind of brings us back to where we all started.
A final word before you go and head to Baltimore. What are you expecting?
I think press from around the world is going to be here in Baltimore, sort of holding the church under a microscope, saying, can you get this right? So stakes are very high, and let's hope the bishops are up for it.
All right. Thank you so much, Christopher. Great preview there. We really appreciate it. And stay with Currents News for complete coverage of the bishops' meeting. Reports from Chris White and Michelle Powers will begin on Tuesday night. The bishops of Argentina are showing support for Pope Francis. In an interview with Crux correspondent Inez San Martin, the head of the Argentine Bishops' Conference, Bishop Oscar Ojea, said the church and its leader have never been under attack, both at home and abroad, as they are right now. The bishop implying that some of the attacks are also coming from within the church and that he and the rest of Argentine prelates stand behind the Holy Father. Authorities in Washington, D.C. have arrested a priest accused of sexually abusing a young girl. Father Urbano Vasquez, who officiated at the Shrine of the Sacred Heart, has been charged with second-degree child sexual abuse that happened back in May 2015. The Archdiocese of Washington released a statement saying, quote, "The Archdiocese of Washington is steadfastly committed to the protection of youth and the healing of those harmed by abuse and adheres to a zero-tolerance policy for credible claims of abuse." The Brooklyn Diocese also has a toll-free and confidential sexual abuse reporting line. That number is 888-634-4499. And for more information, go to the Diocese of Brooklyn's website, dioceseofbrooklyn.org, and click on Protecting Our Children. There's a lot more news headed your way. A special mass to remember all the priests and bishops who have passed in the Brooklyn Diocese. And this.
For most people, having a billboard in Times Square is a dream, but for this man, it's a last resort. I'm Michelle Powers. That story's next.
I found myself constantly thirsty and frustrated because your life depends on a machine, literally.
A Brooklyn Diocese priest who received not one but 2 kidneys talks about his excruciating experience. It's a billboard of hope at the crossroads of the world. The message highlighting the plight of a New York man who is in desperate need of a kidney. Mark Weiner's story mirrors the plight of so many people in the Empire State, patients waiting for an organ donor to step forward. The reality is the process of receiving one could take years. Now, in Mark's case, a Catholic businesswoman learned about his story and hopes her company's Times Square billboard will speed things up. Currents News' Michelle Powers has the story.
Times Square, home to the most foot traffic in the busiest city in the world. But one man's soul's way heavier than the others.
There we go.
This 5,000 square foot billboard is Mark Weiner's introduction to more than 500,000 pedestrians a day.
Like my wife said, this is a matter of life and death.
The former newsman has 8 seconds to make the pitch of his life before the advertising changes. He needs a kidney, and he needs it now. Back at Mark's home on Long Island, the glow of Times Square feels far away, but the much dimmer reality remains the same.
I almost don't remember anything before. This has become our new normal.
Even though it was only 2 years ago, Mark's wife Lisa can't remember the way it was before. Mark got an aggressive cancer, one that removed his kidneys, prostate, and bladder.
That was when I could go on rides.
This is Adventureland.
Yeah.
Pictures now mark a divide in their lives. Before Mark got sick and after.
Everybody says, oh, you'll go on the list, right? No, the list is 7 to 10 years. He can't wait 7 to 10 years.
It was Lisa's idea to light her husband's face up 24/7, a last resort, but one bright enough to see from space.
You took the train up?
That's where Dawn Del Mastro Kruma comes in. She's been Lisa's friend for decades, and she's the president of the company that owns Mark's billboard. The Catholic offered the Weiners the space for free, at 2 minutes an hour, a fee that normally costs $30,000 a month.
This is different because this is a call to action. This is asking people to go do something, and to do something that's very important.
That's Mark's other goal, not only to get a kidney, but more importantly, to raise awareness about the needs and lack of organ donations around the country.
If I get a match tomorrow, I'm hoping all the other people that came forward, they now go into some repository and can be a match for somebody else.
New York may have some of the best hospitals, but it is one of the worst states to be on a waiting list to receive an organ donation. Every year, about 500 New York residents on the waiting list die because of a statewide organ shortage. That's one death every 18 hours. At this moment, there's more than 7,000 people waiting for a kidney in New York State.
Casting such a wide net was so important because You never know why someone might really want to do this.
So Mark's dialysis continues, and it will until he gets a kidney. The average life expectancy for someone on dialysis is 5 to 10 years, though many live well beyond 20.
You see people start to wonder, is this guy going to pull through? Is he getting sicker? Is he going to die? It's the worst.
Mark remains optimistic, going to dinners with his wife and basketball games with his daughter. He's living life. At the same time, he's waiting for it.
There's a reason that we were chosen to go through this, that he was chosen to go through this, that I was chosen to be by his side. You know, there's the saying that God gives you what you can handle. We're on a path that's hopefully going to have the ending that we deserve.
Michelle Powers, Currents News.
If you would like to learn more about Mark and his story, go to his website, helpmarkfindakidney.com. Father Henry Torres is a priest here in the Brooklyn Diocese. He received a kidney not once, but twice. First as a teenager and again while in seminary. He knows Mark's journey well, and he joins us now to talk about it. Father Henry, thank you so much for being here. Twice. 2 transplants, Father Henry. Let's get some background here. The first was donated by your mom, correct?
Yes.
And that failed while you were in Douglaston in seminary. So now you have to begin the process again. This time you have to wait for a donor. I want to talk first with you now about the medical aspect of that. How long did you have to wait? Because as we just heard, Mark is waiting now.
I had to wait about almost 3 years. The process is very strenuous. They have to make sure that not only are you a match, but that the donor will not be in risk, in immediate risk, in danger, or in future risk and danger. So, I mean, it's a very strenuous and very long process to make sure that the donor is healthy and that you will be healthy, and so would they afterwards.
Let's delve into that even a little bit deeper. The troubles went just beyond finding this kidney. What type of physical aspects were you dealing with, physical ailments waiting to get that life-saving kidney?
Your kidneys fail. The majority of people with that kind of failure can't urinate. So you store a lot of those fluids, and a lot of those fluids are usually stored in your heart. It goes to your heart, so it enlarges your heart and also causes you to have trouble breathing. And sometimes some fluids can be found in the lungs, and then you see swelling. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous if you aren't careful with the fluid intake, and if you aren't faithful to your dialysis treatment.
Now, you're fortunate enough, thank God, to have found a second kidney. Mark, we pray will find a kidney as well. So talk to us about the recovery, what happens after the transplant. What should he expect?
He should, one of my things is you have to stay faithful to your medication and to everything the doctor tells you to do in terms of diet, in terms of when you're supposed to take your medication. The recovery, it's slow, but you have to be patient.
It's constant. You're still in recovery. You still have to maintain, correct? Let's talk about your faith. How important was that as you waited, when you received, now that you're in the recovery phase, especially since you were in seminary, you're trying to fulfill your vocation. What role did it play?
A major role. Again, when someone is on dialysis, you're exhausted, you feel out of breath, you're constantly thirsty because an enormous amount of fluids is removed from your body. So your body's trying to gain that fluid again. So you're constantly thirsty. I found myself constantly thirsty and frustrated because your life depends on a machine, literally. And you're constantly thirsty but can't drink too much fluids. I remember once in a frustration and in prayer, in that frustration with God, Mother Teresa came to mind. And her theme of I thirst. And I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it and just saying, like, if this is the thirst of Christ, or a little bit or a portion of Christ's thirst on the cross for souls, and there's a lot that needs to be done. Father
Henry, very, very quickly, you just heard Mark's story. He's going through so much right now. What advice would you give him? 30 seconds.
Remain faithful. Don't lose hope. If you need to talk to someone who understands you, you can reach out to me. But don't lose hope. If you want other advice of where can you go from here to also have other options of looking for kidneys. I'm here for you. Other treatment options. You're not alone, and that's something I would tell him.
Hopefully he gets encouragement seeing you here, sitting here, healthy and faithful, and offering your support. Thank you so much, Father Henry.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
The Diocese of Brooklyn's annual Mass for the deceased was celebrated yesterday. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio celebrated the Mass at the main chapel of the Immaculate Conception Center. It's an opportunity for the diocese to gather as a family and remember their bishops and brother priests who have passed into eternal life.
We do this every year. They've done it in November after the Feast of All the Souls. It's our opportunity to reflect on our own mortality, but also to pray for those who are dead.
Members of the deceased priest families were also present as part of the observance. Still to come on Currents News, promoting Christian presence in the Holy Land. And they're on a fast track to Christmas. More on the Knights of Columbus's special gift to Bishop DiMarzio. And an important programming note for you here. Currents News will be moving to new time slots. Starting Monday, December 3rd, the news will air a half hour earlier at 7 p.m. right here on net. Reruns will air at 10 p.m. and then the next morning again at 7:30 a.m. So mark your calendars. We'll be right back. The Order of the Holy Sepulchre has been working to promote Christian presence in the Holy Land. They've presented the Vatican with some activities that could help. Sean Richardson has more.
Many works that support and encourage Christians living in the Holy Land depend on the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. They are wanting to revitalize their activity in the Holy Land, but without changing its mission. This mission is to ensure that holy sites are still filled with Christians and don't become museums.
Well, there are many needs, and we do our best by telling the story of our people, our brave, courageous people who are remaining strong in the faith despite many pressures.
The order is made up of lay people, priests and religious who economically support Christians in the Middle East. The institution is made up of 30,000 members from 40 countries. It is distributed into 64 delegations and its number is increasing. To belong to the order, it is necessary to be a good Christian. They must be people of faith committed to the values of the order. These values are charity, humility, and obedience. Before entering the order, potential members have to follow a path of formation like Donata Maria did. Her family has been a part of the order for 2 generations. I've had 2 investitures. The first was being invested laity into the order. The second was personally for me when I went to the Holy Land. This visit touched me in a way that I saw the good works of the order that it does in the Holy Land. Through its economical support to the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, they help to financially maintain schools, formation, charitable and social activities there. Sean Richardson, Currents News.
Keeping Christ in Christmas. It's a cause the Knights of Columbus are very passionate about. To help spread the message, they created the Knights of Columbus Keep Christ in Christmas boxcar. The unique collectible adorned with an image of the Holy Family was presented to the Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, as an early Christmas gift, and judging by the look on Bishop's face, the Knights were definitely on the right track there. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Just a reminder that Currents News is moving to a new time slot. Starting on Monday, December 3rd, the news will air at 7 p.m. And as always, thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.